what's inside that bank, man? There's $16 million worth of gold in that.
If you remember this scene, you're definitely a die-hard fan of Kelly's Heroes, the movie considered one of the greatest classics of all time. More than 50 years have passed, and the movie still lives on in the hearts of film lovers with its humorous moments, ideals of friendship, and deep anti-war themes. It seemed like we had uncovered everything about it, but no. The beauty of a classic film is that it always keeps quirky secrets and hidden details that you only discover with each rewatch. Today, we're about to reveal the most interesting secrets about this film, things even the longtime fans might not know. This rewatch is going to be completely different, offering a fresh perspective on Kelly's Heroes. Are you ready? Fact 20. No one in the film is called by their full name. If you pay attention, you'll notice something pretty unusual in Kelly's Heroes. Almost no one in the film is called by their full name. You never hear anyone say Lieutenant Kelly or Captain Big Joe. Everyone is simply referred to by their nickname or rank, like Kelly Big Joe Oddball Crap Game. That's it. This isn't by accident. The film wants you to remember the characters by their actions, by the function they serve for the team, not by their full names. We don't need to know what they're called. They're just soldiers tied to their mission to the war, with goals that are not about being complete individuals. Could the film be trying to show that in war, people become anonymous, left with nothing but simple names, simple nicknames? Maybe everything is just that simple. But maybe there's something deeper behind it. Think about it. But this is just the beginning of a list full of weird things. Are you ready to explore the next secret fact? 19 Kelly's Heroes is loosely based on a real gold heist. Ever heard the rumor that Kelly's Heroes is actually based almost entirely on a real World War II gold heist? Sounds pretty intriguing, right? I'm sure some of us thought so, especially with the film's epic tale of a group of soldiers searching for a massive gold stash. But the truth isn't exactly as it seems. While the film is inspired by a real gold heist, the one recorded by Guinness as the greatest robbery on record, Kelly's Heroes is not a strict remake of this historical event. In reality, the film only loosely draws from that event, and all those funny action scenes and absurd situations you see on screen are purely script creativity. So next time you hear someone claim that the movie is based on a true story, you can confidently say it's just another clever Hollywood trick. Despite its inspiration, the movie built a very unique and entertaining story of its own. So, if the gold in the movie isn't the only thing worth noting, what else is there? Keep an eye on the women in the movie. Do they really only appear briefly? Fact 18. Women appear only 5 times. Here's something strange about this famous war film. Kelly's Heroes has almost no women. Throughout the whole movie, besides a few fleeting moments, you don't see any women making an impact. Women only appear a total of 5 times, and most of those are just quick glimpses. We see the girl with Oddball in Crap Game's loft, a few nuns passing by Oddball's Sherman tank, or the Claremont couple in a tense battle scene. Even John Landis, one of the crew members, appears as one of the nuns in that scene. These moments aren't emphasized, and you definitely won't remember them long. Women are really not a big part of this film. But you've probably noticed that this adds to the movie's uniqueness, making the absence of women actually highlight the alienation, the relationships in a world where war has turned everything into a game meant for men. And the presence of women is just one part. If you think this film is just about battles and fun action, you might want to rethink that, because these omissions actually give Kelly's Heroes a much deeper meaning than you would imagine. And there's another interesting detail that was cut from the film before release. Fact 17. About 20 minutes were cut from the film before its release. People might think Kelly's Heroes is just a fun movie about soldiers looking for gold, right? But here's an interesting story that few people know. In fact, the movie was cut by about 20 minutes before it was officially released. And those cuts weren't just action scenes like you might think. The parts removed were mostly those that delved into the anti-war theme. The original script had a philosophical depth with profound dialogue about war and the inner conflict of the characters. However, during editing, those parts were cut to enhance the action. And that wasn't a small change. It made the film lose its original soul. Clint Eastwood, the lead actor, admitted that the theatrical release made him feel like the movie lost its soul, because the anti-war scenes, which made it not just a war caper, but a philosophical war film, were gone. Still, those changes didn't take away the movie's charm. It remains a unique film, just approached in a way that was easier for the audience to digest. Fact 16. The 3 Tiger I tanks were actually T-34s. When I first watched Kelly's Heroes, I was surprised to realize that the 3 famous Tiger I tanks weren't actual German tanks. Instead, they were T-34s from the old Soviet Union, painstakingly remodeled by the Yugoslav army. From the turret to the hull, everything was altered and made to resemble a Tiger I so well that it was hard to tell the difference. It's a detail I can't help but admire. War films of that time didn't usually care too much about accurately depicting weaponry. Most other films would just repaint modern tanks and slap on a few German symbols to make them recognizable. But here, the film really took the time to get the details right, making the scenes both realistic and fascinating. One of the reasons I love this film is because of its attention to even the smallest details. Also, Oddball's Sherman tank has its own fascinating story. It's an M4A3E4 Sherman from the Yugoslav army, upgraded after the war with a 76mm turret, unlike the usual Sherman tanks. When you look at these tanks, you'll see they weren't just props, they were technical works of art, showing true dedication to every shot. Fact 15. Swedish fans built a model of the movie and were arrested for spying. Here's one story that'll leave you saying, "No way." In the 1990s, a group of Swedish war game enthusiasts decided to do something crazy. They started building a 1/72nd scale model of the town of Visinada, where the gold heist in Kelly's Heroes takes place. But that's not the weirdest part. They didn't just make a model by hand, they hired a pilot and a plane to take aerial photos of the town, making sure their model was as accurate as possible. And then, the Croatian authorities, seeing them working, suspected them of being spies. No kidding, they were actually arrested and interrogated for allegedly gathering intelligence for some foreign power. They were eventually released after a few hours. Seriously, this is like something out of a movie. As a film lover, I get it. It's all out of pure fandom. But maybe avoid copying their method unless you want to end up in a similar mess. Fact 14. A female roll cut at the last minute. One of the things I've always wondered about Kelly's Heroes is why there's such a lack of female presence in the film. It's a war movie filled with intense situations, solid friendships, and classic Hollywood action scenes, but there's hardly any notable female roles. This becomes even clearer when you realize that in the original script, there was a pretty significant female character who got cut at the last minute. This role was originally assigned to Ingrid Pitt, a well-known actress at the time, but for reasons unknown, it was removed right before filming began. It's a real shame because I believe that this female character could have added another layer to the film. In a war context, the appearance of a female character wouldn't just be a superficial addition, but could have highlighted the subtle conflicts among the male characters. But the film was shot without her, and so that role disappeared right before it even began. Was it a regret, or was it the right decision? Would her appearance have made the film stand out even more? Personally, I think it's great that the film still maintained its identity. But my friend argues that if the female role hadn't been cut, Kelly's Heroes could have been even more special, offering a balance between the strength of war and the humanity of the characters. What do you think Fact 13 Oddball stands out so much? He nearly breaks the film. But that's exactly why it works. Oddball wasn't just an eccentric character in Kelly's Heroes. He was a symbol of resistance, and the way Donald Sutherland brought him to life injected a fresh dynamic into the film. It's hard to picture Oddball without thinking about the stark contrast between him and the other soldiers in the crew. His humor and quirkiness made him stand out in a film with strong characters, but this wasn't an accident. It represented a shift for Donald Sutherland as he transitioned from his role in MASH to Oddball, carrying a rebellious spirit that was exactly what the film needed. Oddball, despite his humorous persona and tendency to avoid war at all costs, was actually the embodiment of an anti-war stance. Through Oddball, the film wasn't just telling a war story, it was asking big questions about the nature of war and peace. Oddball was a soft but sharp protester. His actions weren't the ramblings of a lost soul, but rather someone standing firm in their beliefs, no matter how chaotic the world around them got. I see Oddball as the representation of a new generation, a group of people wanting to change the perspective on war. Kelly's Heroes highlighted this beautifully, with Donald Sutherland's thoughtful portrayal. In the 70s, cinema began moving away from traditional war heroes, and anti-war films like Kelly's Heroes emerged, not just criticizing war, but reflecting the inner conflict of soldiers caught in its grasp. Oddball, though not the protagonist, played a crucial role in delivering this message. While the film isn't purely anti-war, Oddball made Kelly's Heroes stand out as a unique war movie, offering not just the usual battles, but also a profound reflection on the human spirit and rebellion. Fact 12. The real reason. Kelly's Heroes was filmed in Yugoslavia. When you watch Kelly's Heroes, you're likely struck by the vast landscapes, especially the large battle scenes featuring tanks rolling through wide-open spaces. But did you know that the film was actually shot in Yugoslavia? And the reason for this choice is quite surprising. The decision to film in Yugoslavia wasn't just due to the unique landscapes or the remnants of war still visible there. A more significant reason was financial. After the film premiered there, the money made from screenings couldn't be transferred out of the country due to political reasons. However, this turned out to be a huge benefit for the production, as the Yugoslav government used the proceeds from the screenings to finance the movie. This not only provided the film with stable financial support, but also gave the filmmakers the opportunity to shoot in locations that were hard to come by in Western countries. Another key factor was Yugoslavia's World War II military surplus, including the famous T-34 tanks from the Soviet Union. These weapons and military equipment helped the filmmakers accurately recreate the battles of the war. The tanks were not just props, but real tools that brought the film's combat scenes to life. What's more, Kelly's Heroes didn't just offer thrilling action scenes, but also created a vivid historical backdrop, making viewers feel like they were witnessing the final days of World War II. This choice demonstrates how important the attention to detail was in making the film, particularly with the weapons and military equipment. Compared to many other war films of the time, Kelly's Heroes went above and beyond in its portrayal of wartime tools, adding depth and authenticity to the film. As a result, the film wasn't just produced in a country with a war-torn backdrop, but benefited from Yugoslavia's fantastic financial and logistical support. This blend of financial backing, politics, and authentic locations made Kelly's Heroes stand out as a unique war movie. What do you think Fact 11 Donald Sutherland was in a coma? Due to meningitis. There are some behind-the-scenes stories that make you hold your breath, and Donald Sutherland's ordeal during the filming of Kelly's Heroes is definitely one of them. Ever thought that a cast member could almost lose their life while filming? Well, that's exactly what happened to Sutherland during the making of this film. While filming, Donald Sutherland fell into a coma due to meningitis. It was a life-threatening condition that halted production, and everyone on set was immediately thrown into worry. The doctors said Sutherland was clinically dead for 5 seconds a moment, when everyone feared the worst. At the time, nothing could be done to save him, as there wasn't enough antibiotic available. His condition worsened, and the crew was uncertain whether he'd pull through. But then, something miraculous happened. Sutherland recovered quickly, far beyond what anyone could have imagined. His return to the set was not only a physical triumph, but a testament to his resilience and determination as an actor. However, despite the miracle of his return, there's a quiet loss we all have to face with Kelly's heroes. When the faces that made this movie what it is are no longer with us, a piece of cinematic history closes. It's a bittersweet feeling to look back at the moments they gave us, knowing they won't be creating more. Now let's move on to the next fact, a quiet moment that makes us reflect on what we've lost. Fact 10. Clint Eastwood is the last surviving cast member. Looking back at Kelly's Heroes, a film we still love and cherish, it's hard not to feel a quiet sense of loss, as one by one the faces that made the film successful have passed on. From the moment Telly Savalas, Big Joe, passed away, a part of the film's memory left us. Then, Donald Sutherland, Harry Dean Stanton, and so many others. Each time one of the stars left, it created a large hole in the hearts of those who love this film. Most notably, Tom Troop, who passed away on July 20th, 2025, now leaves Clint Eastwood as the only surviving member of the legendary cast. This is a huge loss for the fans of the movie, as the faces that became synonymous with Kelly's Heroes are no longer with us. A part of cinematic history is also closing, and we can't help but feel a sense of sadness every time we think of the great moments they created. Fact 9. It was the 24th highest-grossing film of 1970. The first time you hear about the box office earnings of Kelly's Heroes, you might be a little surprised because it wasn't exactly a blockbuster hit right off the bat. But surprisingly, Kelly's Heroes ranked 24th in the list of the highest-grossing films of 1970. Sure, the movie didn't get the kind of promotion that other major blockbusters of its time got, but it brought something uniquely appealing to the table, a blend of humor and war that no other film quite matched. Maybe that's why it became such an entertaining watch for audiences in a year filled with big films like Patton and MASH. So why did it do so well? Kelly's Heroes wasn't just a typical war story. It had a unique flavor, quirky characters, and unforgettable situations that made it stick in the minds of the audience. And it's that combination that helped the movie find its way to the top of the box office charts, despite not being the go-to choice at the time. Fact 8. The movie went through multiple title changes. When I first watched Kelly's Heroes, I couldn't help but think about its rather unusual title. But little did most people know that the film had undergone quite an odd journey with its title before landing on the official one we know today. The story of these adventuring soldiers and their surprising situations actually began with a very different name, The Warriors. Originally, the title The Warriors probably wanted to convey the idea of fighters on a difficult mission in the midst of war, but then people realized it was too generic and could easily be confused with many other films in the same genre. Even so, with such a simple title, it was still a solid start for a story about soldiers searching for gold in the midst of war. Then the film was renamed Kelly's Warriors, a title that better emphasized the main character, Kelly. While that made sense, I still felt it didn't quite do justice to the film's full depth. Finally, the title Kelly's Heroes was chosen, and it turned out to be a perfect decision. The word heroes doesn't just describe Kelly and his team, but also honors the ordinary men who rise above difficult circumstances. Which of these three titles do you prefer? Let me know below and see how many others think the same. Fact 7. The song Burning Bridges became a hit, and Mike Curb became California's lieutenant governor. You've probably heard the song Burning Bridges from Kelly's Heroes, a signature tune from the film, but did you know it became a real hit? What's even more fascinating is that the man behind the song, Mike Curb, didn't just compose and perform the track. He later ventured into politics and became lieutenant governor of California. Who would have guessed that someone from the music industry could create such a remarkable political career? It's an unexpected transformation that few people saw coming. Burning Bridges. A song about parting ways and regret ended up being the stepping stone that led Mike Curb to an entirely new career path. Fact 6. The film's large-scale on-location shoot. Kelly's Heroes, a film that some might assume has a moderate scale, well, that's a misconception I've noticed even among self-proclaimed fans. In fact, the film was shot at real locations in Yugoslavia, and the scale of the shoot was quite massive. The crew didn't just stay in a studio, they moved through multiple large locations from Novi Sad to Visinada and Umag. This was an expensive and time-consuming undertaking, but it created realistic scenes that many other war films didn't have. Before we dive into the last 5 quirky facts that even the most hardcore fans might not know, don't forget to give this video a like. Fact 5. The Tiger Tank Showdown has a strong influence from Clint Eastwood's spaghetti westerns. If you're a fan of Clint Eastwood and the Italian westerns, you'll definitely notice a playful homage in the showdown between Oddball Donald Sutherland and the Tiger Tank. The film draws inspiration from one of the most iconic scenes from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, where Clint Eastwood faces off with Lee Van Cleef in an intense standoff. But instead of a serious gunfight, the film turns it into a parody version of that scene between American soldiers and a German tank. What makes this scene so memorable is not only the imagery, but also the music. The familiar sounds of clinking horse spurs from Italian westerns were cleverly inserted into this scene, creating a humorous and satirical twist on what would otherwise have been a tense battle. The use of these non-existent spurs adds a layer of humor to the intense confrontation, making the film not just serious, but also full of hidden meaning and more accessible for viewers. Honestly, this is one of the parts I find most entertaining in Kelly's Heroes. Fact 4. John Landis and Donald Sutherland, an unexpected collaboration. There's a fun story about John Landis and Donald Sutherland that I think not many people know. Landis actually predicted that one day Sutherland would become a director, and Sutherland casually replied that if that happened, he'd appear in all of Landis's films. And sure enough, Sutherland kept his word and appeared in several of Landis's films, from the Kentucky Fried Movie, 1977, to National Lampoon's Animal House, 1978. I always find something special in this relationship, not just as a collaboration between a director and an actor, but as a lasting friendship that has spanned many years. Fact 3. The German Tiger Tank commander was a replica of Marlon Brando. You probably won't believe this, but the German tank commander in Kelly's Heroes looks like a direct copy of Christian Diestel from The Young Lions, 1958, played by Marlon Brando. Seriously? From his appearance to his way of speaking, everything seems to echo Brando's character. Both characters share a stern appearance and a cold, authoritative manner of speaking. If this isn't a huge coincidence, could it be that the film deliberately drew inspiration from a well-known character from the 50s? If you're a fan of The Young Lions, you'll definitely be surprised by the similarities. It's hard to accept that Kelly's Heroes so clearly copied a character from another film, and I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. Let me know what you think in the comments before I unlock the final 2 quirky facts. Fact 2: $16 million in gold and the share for 130 participants. We all probably remember the grand plan to steal $16 million worth of gold in Kelly's Heroes. A huge operation with a massive sum of money that Kelly and his team hope to share among all the participants. But if you do the math, that gold isn't going to just a few people. With a tank crew of 5 plus Big Joe's team and the engineers needed for the bridge work, who according to the sergeant required about 100 people for the job, the total number of participants comes to 130. When you divide the $16 million in gold, by that each person would get about $123,076. That's a nice chunk of change, especially if you calculate it in today's money, where each person would get around $2.26 million in 2025. You might think, wow, look at how much each person gets. And honestly, if you were one of the characters in Kelly's Heroes, you'd definitely be thrilled about that gold share. But let's put that aside for now, and get ready for the quirkiest mystery I've been saving for the very last. Fact 1. The film never provides a specific date, but you can guess. Based on historical events. Have you noticed that Kelly's Heroes never gives a specific date for the events depicted in the movie? An interesting fact, right? But don't worry, even though no exact date is given. There are a few historical clues that help us guess when the film takes place. For instance, Big Joe and his team are trying to move into Nancy, France, while it's still occupied by the Germans. If you're a history buff, you'll realize that Nancy was liberated by the U.S. Third Army on September 15, 1944. Then, Captain Maitland mentions needing to go to Paris to pick up a few things for the general. Paris was liberated on August 25, 1944. While these events help us guess the time frame, the film never officially gives us an exact date. Isn't it interesting? The movie creates an ambiguous sense of time, making the story feel like it could happen anytime, anywhere. No exact dates, just soldiers acting in the chaotic world of war. After uncovering all these quirky facts, you'll probably realize that this movie's lasting appeal comes from its deeper values rather than just its action scenes or surface-level humor. At its core, Kelly's Heroes tells the story of ordinary people in the middle of war, those who overcome challenges and fight not just for personal gain, but for friendship and unity. The feeling you get when watching this film still lingers in your mind. Kelly's Heroes reminds us of a beautiful memory of friendship and of camaraderie in the face of adversity. This movie is a vibrant portrayal of war, but not just with fighting. There's humor, exploration, and sometimes those peaceful moments amidst the chaos. If you're one of those who've loved this movie, I'm sure it will always hold a special place in your heart, like a beautiful memory of imperfect heroes who taught us profound lessons about life and friendship. So what did you take away from this film? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts below.